What's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today we're going to be grading every single NBA team at the halfway point of the 2024 NBA season. We're a little bit over halfway for most of the teams, but this is about the halfway mark. We're about to head into the All-Star break, and we've kind of gotten to know every single team. Some teams are way exceeding expectations, some teams have been terrible, some teams have made trades that I think are going to positively reflect on their record in the second half of the season. So I thought it would be fun to go ahead and give a quick recap of every team's year so far with a single letter grade. I'm not going to be doing pluses or minuses. It's just going to be straight up A, B, C, D, or F. And this isn't just based on how the team is doing so far this season. Otherwise, I could just show you the standings. It's going to be based off the expectations for the team going into a season. Were they a young rebuilding team that is exceeding expectations? Were they a team that was hoping to compete for a championship and they kind of suck? So that'll kind of play into the grade. And I'll explain why every team is graded the way they are when I get to them in the video. As usual, going to go in alphabetical order from the Atlanta Hawks to Washington Wizards. There will be the usual timestamps if you want to go ahead and check out your team in particular, and also let me know what you think your team's grade should be at this point in the season. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos, and let's go ahead and grade every team. Starting things off, we've got the Atlanta Hawks, and I'm going to go ahead and immediately give them an F. It has been a disastrous season so far for Atlanta, a team that me and many others thought could go ahead and be a top 6 seed, build off of the success we saw from them in the second half of last year under Quinn Snyder. Instead, is a team that is 9 games below 500. They're on the verge of missing the play-in race entirely. DeJounte Murray has not worked out next to Trae Young. It seems likely he's going to be traded. Jalen Johnson has established himself as a building block, so that's a positive. But beyond that, not much else is really going your way. I don't know how many of the guys on the roster right now feel like core pieces going forward, guys that can help you compete with Trae Young on the roster. I just don't know how this team gets back to being relevant. And this was, again, supposed to be a year where they took a step forward. Instead, they're in absolute limbo. I've got no clue where they go next. Following them up, we've got the Boston Celtics, who go all the way to the other side of the spectrum, and they get an A. This is a Celtics team that's been the best team in the NBA so far, so hard not to give them an A. This is right about where I had them. I predicted them to be the 1 seed. I picked them to win the NBA Finals, and so far they look like the title favorite I thought they were going to be. They've got 5 All-Star caliber players in the starting lineup. The bench is shaky, but it's held up so far. They've got a chance to improve at the deadline, so we'll see what they do there. But up to this point, they've been the best team in the NBA. There's not really that much else to say. Been a little bit shakier recently in January, but they've been dealing with some injuries, and so far, it feels like injuries are really the only big thing that can consistently slow this Celtics team down. Otherwise, they've looked dominant. Over for the Brooklyn Nets, I went ahead and gave them a grade of D. I thought about giving them an F, but I didn't think this team was going to be that good. Really, the grade that I'm going to give them for the full season is probably going to depend on what they do at the trade deadline. In my opinion, this is a team that very clearly is not good, needs to trade away a lot of their pieces, get back some draft capital, and start building towards the next era. I understand you don't have your draft pick, but you've got to reset sooner than later. Otherwise, you're just hanging out mediocrity. If this is a team that goes ahead and buys or doesn't trade away a lot of their pieces, the grade might go down to an F. But for the moment, I've got some optimism. At the very least, you've seen some flashes from some of the guys on the roster. Just up to this point, this Nets team has been bad, and I pray they don't make a big mistake at the deadline and hold on to a lot of this talent. For the Charlotte Hornets, they're also going to go ahead and get a grade of D. Another team that I didn't think was going to be good this season. Even if the Hornets felt like they might be, I didn't have high expectations. But I've been pleasantly surprised by Brandon Miller in his first season. I knew he'd be pretty good, but he's been even better than I was expecting. Looks very clearly like a cornerstone for them going forward. LaMelo Ball has been fantastic when he's actually playing. Unfortunately, continues to deal with injury issues, which is a concern for the Hornets. But if he can stay healthy, looks like an all-star caliber player. Some of the other young guys on your roster, like a Nick Smith Jr., Mark Williams, have shown some flashes. And this Hornets team started off a bit of a fire sale. They trade away Terry Rozier, which is a good sign. I want to see them trade away a lot of pieces heading towards the deadline. And if they do that, they get a top pick in this draft. Overall, I think it's a perfectly fine season for the Charlotte Hornets. I could theoretically give them a C because they're kind of doing exactly what I was expecting, but for a team that has 10 wins, giving them a C feels wrong, so D it is. Speaking of C's, for the Chicago Bulls, I'm going to go ahead and give them one of those. They get a C grade for the first half of the season. It's been a weird year for the Chicago Bulls because Kobe White's burst onto the scene, and that's a big plus. They're in the middle of the play-in race. It feels like this is a team that could maybe somehow find their way into the playoffs. But for me personally, I don't think that's what they need to do. This is another team that I really want to see sell at the deadline. Zach LaVine doesn't seem like he has that much of a market, so if they don't trade him, I won't really blame them. But I think they should go ahead and trade Alex Caruso, DeMar DeRozan. If you can get something back for Vucevic, go ahead and do that. I just really don't want to see the Bulls try and run this thing back again next season for what feels like the 4th year too many, even though this core hasn't even been together that long. That's how long it feels like this group has been together and just chilling in mediocrity. So this deadline, like a couple of the other teams before, before, is very, very important. If they just hold on to their guys and it seems like they're thinking about extending DeRozan and keeping this thing going, this grade is going to plummet. But for the moment, Kobe White's been good and they've held up reasonably. They've got a chance to go ahead and get a lot of value back for these assets. Let's see if they do it. Next up for the Cleveland Cavaliers, I went ahead and gave them a grade of B. I thought about giving them an A, but I settled on a B. I didn't want to give too many teams an A, but this team has done a pretty good job of staying up there in the top 5 in the Eastern Conference, despite a lot of injuries. Garland and Mobley have missed a majority of the season. Donovan Mitchell's been playing like an MVP candidate, if you ask me. Should be starting in the All-Star game. He's been maybe the best guard in the Eastern Conference this season. Jared Allen has been fantastic as well. He's played up to an All-Star caliber. A lot of the guys around them have been contributing in big ways. This is a team that's been finding ways to get wins and stay towards the top of a pretty loaded top half of the Eastern Conference, despite super key injuries. So while they're not a top 3 seed like I think I predicted or I thought was possible, in the face of injuries, they've held up pretty well. So they go ahead and get a B for right now. And this is a team I still think can be really dangerous when everybody's playing. For the Dallas Mavericks, I went ahead and gave them a grade of C. This is a team that had championship aspirations coming into the season, have not lived up to those. At times, they look fantastic. Luka Doncic is playing like one of the best players in the world, having one of his best seasons. Kyrie's looked great when he's been healthy. Unfortunately, has dealt with some injuries. Like Dante Exum's been a great addition. Derek Lively's looked good. But the supporting cast around Luke and Kyrie still feels pretty shaky. Grant Williams hasn't been the guy that they were hoping he would be. Looked great at the beginning of the season, has fallen off a cliff over the course of the year. Josh Green didn't take the big breakout jump I was hoping for. Tim Hardaway Jr. has been great as a bucket getter, so they've got some positives and negatives, and that's just kind of been the season for the Mavericks so far. While they are sitting at the 8th seed, they're only a few games back of like the 5 seed, so I didn't ding them too much. So far, this has just been a team that's been very up and down, so a grade right in the middle felt kind of appropriate. For the Denver Nuggets, I'm going to go ahead and give them an A. They still feel like the team to beat in the Western Conference, if you ask me. Technically the 4 seed right now, but that's just because of win percentage. The next time they play a game, they'll probably go ahead and move up to the 3 or even the 2 seed. This is a team that's still in the running for the top spot in the Western Conference. Nikola Jokic still feels like the best player in the world. He's in the thick of the MVP race. Jamal Murray's been great. MPJ, Aaron Gordon, KCP are giving you great play across the board. Some of the role players have stepped up more than I thought they would. The Nuggets still feel like a really, really good team. Now, the competition in the West is fierce, and it's going to be a tough uphill battle for them to retain their title, but they still feel like they're very capable of doing it, and really that's all I need to see from the Nuggets at this point. For the Pistons, I think there's only one grade we can give them, and that's an F. They're 5-40. Like, I don't think I have to say that much more. On pace to be one of the worst teams of all time. Had one of the worst losing streaks in not just NBA history, but overall sports history. This is a team that is still going through the rebuild, sure, but they were hoping to take a jump this year. Cade Cunningham missed almost all of last season. They won just 17 games. He's back, was looking to be an all-star. They brought in Monty Williams as the highest paid coach in the NBA. They still got a veteran like Bojan Bogdanovic. We're hoping from jumps from some young guys. This Pistons team wasn't supposed to be maybe the worst team in NBA history, but they've got a chance to go ahead and be so there's no other grade we can give them than F. Speaking of Fs, the Golden State Warriors also get a grade of F. As I'm recording this, they just lost a crazy game to the Los Angeles Lakers that pushes them to 19-24 in the season, 5 games below 500, and they're the 12th seed at the moment for a team that was trying to go ahead and compete for a championship. Last season was really rough, but it felt like kind of a weird year after Draymond punched Jordan Poole. They trade Poole away, brought in Chris Paul, and he has dealt with injury, but even if Chris Paul was healthy, and even when he was healthy, this team has never felt very good. Steph Curry's doing his best, but he can't really carry the team all the way up to a top seed when the supporting cast isn't great. Clay is clearly regressing. Wiggins has been awful this season. Draymond got suspended. It's just been a really rough year for the Golden State Warriors. They've got a big deadline in front of them. I can't wait to see what they do, especially because it doesn't feel like there's 1 or 2 pieces out there that are going to be able to fix a Golden State Warriors team that at the moment just feels broken. The team right above them in the standings is the Houston Rockets, and I'm going to give them a grade of B. I wasn't super high on this Rockets team. I think I had them as like a 12 or 13 seed in the Western Conference, but they've exceeded my expectations. They're in the thick of the play-in race. It feels like they've got a shot if they can pick it up a little bit. They've been struggling as of late. The defense has fallen, but they still are a top 10 defense on the season. Alperen Şengün has broken out into a bona fide all-star caliber player. Love what we've seen from Jabari Smith Jr. Cam Whitmore has been great as he's getting more minutes. Jalen Green has struggled a lot this season, but he's been picking up a little bit as of late. Hope that continues. Dillon Brooks has been good for them. This team isn't doing anything too crazy, but they're in the mix of the play-in race. I didn't think they would be there. They've been better than I thought. They're establishing an identity, and I think this has just been a pretty solid season for a Rockets team that has been trying to form an identity for the past few years. Finally, feels like they've got a little bit of direction and actual light at the end of the tunnel. For the Indiana Pacers, I'm going to go ahead and give them an A. You might think this is a bit of a high grade for a team that's a 6 seed, but I've really liked what I've seen from them. Tyrese has become an all-star, all-NBA caliber player, clearly the franchise cornerstone. I like a lot of the stuff we've seen from the supporting cast, And probably most important of all, I really like the Pascal Siakam trade. When Tyrese Haliburton gets healthy and is playing full time, I think this team's going to be way better. I really like that trade. That bumps the grade up a little bit for me. And this feels like a team that could give one of those top seeds a really tough series in the first round. They're only a couple games back of the 5 seed too, so if they rack up some wins, maybe they end up getting close to home court advantage. And this is all coming from a team that's just in their second real year of going through this entire process. And the good grades continue with the Los Angeles Clippers, who get an A from me. They're one of those 4 teams in the thick of the 1 seed race, and this comes after they started the season decently, made the Harden trade, and then lost like 6 or 7 games in a row. They looked abysmal when Harden first got there, but they took some time, figured things out, and since that losing streak, they've been the hottest team in the NBA. They've looked unstoppable, just decimated the Boston Celtics in Boston tonight as I'm recording this video. Kawhi's been one of the best players in the world. Harden is looking like one of the best versions of this non-MVP version of himself. You've got Paul George playing at a high level. Russ is doing great stuff off the bench. The supporting cast has been good. They have ways to upgrade the roster at the deadline. The Clippers look like the best version that we've seen in maybe the entire Paul George, Kawhi Leonard era. They look really scary. The trade was a huge home run. They got Kawhi Leonard as well to sign an extension, which is big. If they could sign Paul George, I know I don't give out A+, but this is a team that feels like is nearly deserving of an A+, and they feel like legitimate title contenders when coming into the season. I wasn't sure if that was going to be the case. Also, they're just healthy, which in and of itself is deserving of a pretty high grade. Sticking in Los Angeles, the Lakers get a grade of D. I thought they were going to be championship contenders this season. I don't feel that way anymore. They are 1 game above 500 after the win over the Warriors tonight, hovering right around the play-in. They're the 9 seed at the moment, tied with the Utah Jazz, a team that I thought was going to be way worse than them. I guess maybe my expectations were just too high. I liked their offseason, thought they were going to build off the Western Conference Finals appearance. Haven't really done that. LeBron and AD have also been relatively healthy. It's not like those two guys being hurt has cost them. They just haven't been able to put together consistent great plays of basketball. The offense is still really bad. The defense hasn't been as good as it needs to be to carry this team. They still can't shoot the 3 ball. A lot of question marks going into the trade deadline. Is there a player out there that can save this team? And I mean, last season, they did make the Western Conference Finals from the play-in, so maybe all they have to do is get into the playoffs. But I don't know. I don't really believe in this Lakers team, and they're certainly not a championship contender like I thought they'd be at this point. The only saving grace for them is that they do still have LeBron and Anthony Davis, who have been healthy, and those 2 guys are playing out of their minds. Next up, we've got the Memphis Grizzlies, and unfortunately for them, they get a grade of F this season, and it's really not even that much of their fault. I like the Marcus Smart trade. I thought it was going to help them. All they had to do was weather the Ja Morant 25-game suspension, and things were going to be fine. And they didn't do the best job, but they're still very well within play-in range. I mean, even as I'm recording this, they're still pretty close. They're only 5 games out of the play-in race, but unfortunately, Ja Morant is out for the season. Desmond Bane's going to miss like 6 weeks. I wouldn't even be surprised if they shut him down for the year. You've got Marcus Smart, who's hardly played due to a bunch of injuries. Jaren Jackson's playing his butt off. Like Vince Williams has looked pretty good, but this is a team that had top seed aspirations in the Western Conference. I can't really give them anything other than an F. Like Steven Adams also is missing the entire season. We don't know when Brandon Clark's going to be back. It's just been so unfortunate for the Grizzlies. One of the most injury-riddled seasons I've ever seen from a team. Hopefully next season they can get healthier, but this season has been nothing short of a disaster. For the Miami Heat, I'm going to go ahead and give them a C. If this was a couple of weeks ago, I probably would have given them like a B or maybe even an A, but they're currently in the midst of a 5-6 game losing streak. Terry Rozier struggled a little bit since he got there. I do still like the Terry Rozier trade. I thought about moving them up to a B partially because I like that trade a lot, but they just don't feel like they have a lot of an offensive identity. Part of that is probably due to some injuries that have plagued them all season. And I do give them credit for staying resilient in the face of those injuries, but even when healthy, this team just hasn't felt super formidable up to this point. It might just take some time with Terry Rozier. I'm not saying that the season's over by any means, but I want to see some more consistency before I move their grade up, and right now, they don't feel that much like a team that could repeat their feat and come out of the Eastern Conference again. The Milwaukee Bucks are a super weird case. I went ahead and gave them a grade of B. They're 32-14, second seed in the Eastern Conference, one of the best records in the NBA. Like, it feels like all things that should add up to a grade of A for them, but as you know, there's been a lot of drama along the way. Adrian Griffin got fired. Doc Rivers is now in as head coach. Don't really love that signing. Dame has not been as good as he was last year for Portland. Might just take some time for him to continue to get acclimated to Milwaukee. They need him to be back, though, by the time the playoffs come, if they want to be as good as maybe they can be. The defense has been one of the worst in the entire NBA. They've got to figure that out. Still feel like they need to make upgrades to this roster. They're holding up in terms of record, like Giannis is having one of the best seasons of his career, and they still are the 2 seed, so I don't feel like I can give them a worse grade than this, but it's been a weird route to get here, and it still feels like things are a bit shaky in Milwaukee, shakier than I was expecting them to be, because I thought this team was going to be an absolute juggernaut. For the Minnesota Timberwolves, I have to go ahead and give them a grade of A. They've got some question marks, mainly the offense, which has been really rough this season, but they're the best defense in the entire league. Rudy Gobert has been amazing, and they are in the thick of the 1 seed race for a team that a lot of people didn't project making the playoffs outright. A lot of people had them in that playing range. The 2 big things has worked so far. Anthony Edwards is continuing to rise. Conley's looked great. Jaden McDaniels has been good. I like this Timberwolves team a lot. I'm excited to see what they can do over the rest of the season. Maybe they make a move at the deadline, but right now, they've been one of the better teams in the Western Conference, so have to give them an A, especially because they're blowing all my expectations out of the water. Next up, we've got the Pelicans, and I'm going to go ahead and give them a grade of B. This is a team that I wasn't sure if they were going to make the play-in race because the West was stacked, and they've been so riddled with injuries. When they've been healthy, they've looked continuously like one of the better teams in the West. That's just been kind of rare, but this season, they've stayed relatively healthy. They're not getting any monster numbers from Zion, Ingram, or CJ. All of them are playing pretty well, right around all-star caliber, even though I don't know if they're going to get an all-star. Trey Murphy III has looked good. Herb Jones is still a great perimeter defender. They're only the 7 seed, but they're just half a game back of the 6 spot. They're only 1 game back of the 5 seed, so they're in the thick of that 5 to 6, 7-ish range, maybe even down to the play-in if they fall a couple of spots. The West is all just really close, but I think this Pelicans team is doing a decent job. Hopefully they stay healthy, and if they do, they're going to be one of the scary teams to face in the playoffs if you're one of those top seeds. Next up, we've got the New York Knicks, and I think I'm going to go ahead and give them an A. This is a team that I probably would have given a B if they didn't make the OG Anunoby trade, but they did. I really liked it at the moment, and it has turned them into one of the best teams in the NBA. They have been on fire ever since they made that deal. Their defense has taken a huge uptick, and that's with Mitchell Robinson being injured. Jalen Brunson's been fantastic. Julius Randle's picked it up big time from his rough start to the season. Did just seemingly dislocate his shoulder tonight. Hopefully everything's good with him. But as of late, the Knicks look like one of the best teams in the NBA. They're right on the heels of the Sixers looking for the 3rd seed, and they look unstoppable at the moment. They've been fantastic. Again, if their record is what it was, 29-17 right now, I'd probably give them a B because this is right around where I was expecting them in this 4 to 5 range. But because of the OG Anunoby trade and how good they've looked as of late, I'm going to bump them up to an A. Speaking of A's, my Oklahoma City Thunder go ahead and land an A as well. I don't think anybody would have guessed that the Thunder would be the number 1 overall seed in the Western Conference right now. Even me as a huge Thunder fan, I wouldn't have guessed that. They're 32-13, one of the youngest teams in the NBA. Shea is an MVP candidate. Chet Holmgren's in the thick of the Rookie of the Year race. Jalen Williams is burgeoning as an all-star. Role players have been amazing across the board. Mark Daigneault looks like the Coach of the Year favorite. Everything is going fantastic for the Thunder. Even if they don't win it all this season, they're still one of the youngest teams in the league and have so many picks at their disposal. They could go ahead and make a couple moves at the deadline if they wanted to too. OKC is just in a phenomenal spot in a year that I thought was going to be a bit of a stepping stone. Instead, they've arrived as one of the best teams in the Western Conference. Speaking of young teams, we've got the Orlando Magic, and I'm going to go ahead and give them a grade of B. If this was towards the start of the season when they were the 2 seed, they would have for sure gotten an A, but they've fallen a bit down since then. They've had a bit of regression from some of their guys. The offense is still really rough, but the defense looks really good. Powell's been fantastic. Franz has been good. Jalen Suggs is really finding a role on this team. They've just dealt with some injuries and some overall clunkiness on the roster. It feels like they're trying to figure out who fits and who doesn't, so maybe we see some movement from them around the deadline. But even still, this is a big stepping stone for the Magic. They've got a chance to make the playoffs, and if they do, I think this season's a massive success. For the Philadelphia 76ers, I'm going to go ahead and give them an A. This is a team that I was a little bit worried about coming off of the disastrous end to the playoffs last season, the James Harden situation coming into the year. I didn't know what to expect from them necessarily, but what ended up happening is they made a pretty good Harden trade that got them some solid role players. Kelly Oubre's been fantastic as an offseason addition. Maxey stepped up in a big way. Nick Nurse has been a great head coach, and Joel Embiid is playing at one of the best levels we've ever seen from a big man. He's having one of the best individual seasons of all time. Feels like probably a lock for the MVP if he plays 65 games. We don't know if he's going to. Just missed this past game against the Nuggets with some knee soreness, but when he plays, Embiid looks like one of the best players in the world. If they can go ahead and make a big move at this deadline, the Sixers are going to be one of the scariest teams in the entire Eastern Conference. And hey, maybe this is the season that Embiid finally makes a statement, but up to this point, he's making a statement of some kind and trying to win a second MVP in the process. For the Phoenix Suns, I'm going to go ahead and give them a C. This has been a really weird season for them. Dealt with a lot of injuries, specifically to Bradley Beal, not a ton of games with the big three all playing, but as of late, they found their footing. They started the season a few games under 500. There were rumors about Kevin Durant being upset, but since right around Christmas, they've really kind of figured things out. They've jumped up to the 6th seed, 7 games above 500, and they're starting to look more and more like the team that we were expecting them to be coming into the season. I did have them as a top 2 seed, so I can't really give them a B because they've not quite met my expectations or even gotten close to them, but I think as the season goes on, the Suns are going to continue to show a lot more more. And if they can stay healthy, they still do feel like a pretty scary team, although would like to see them make some type of addition at the deadline. For the Portland Trailblazers, I'm going to go ahead and give them a D. This feels a little bit harsh to a team that's going through a rebuild and a team that I was expecting to be one of the worst in the West. But the main reason that they're not at a C, which is right about what my expectations would be, is because like DeAndre Ayton has been super underwhelming. I thought this could be a big season from him. Scoot Henderson hasn't had the best rookie season so far, although I've liked a lot of the things we've seen from him recently. Robert Williams missing almost the entire season is a huge blow to this team. I was hoping to see what he could look like in Portland. So they've just had some issues here and there. But overall, I think it's been a perfectly fine season. This is what the Blazers need to do. They need to tank. We'll see what they do at the deadline. Overall, they're one of the worst teams in the league, kind of what I was expecting. For the Sacramento Kings, I'm going to go ahead and lob them a B. They're 26-18, good for the 5th seed in the Western Conference. I thought this was going to be a team that was going to go through a lot of regression, and sure, they're not a top 3 seed like they were, but the team is still pretty good. De'Aaron Fox is better than he was last year. Sabonis is having probably the best season of his career. Keegan Murray hasn't taken a big jump offensively, but defensively, he has been worlds better. They've got some solid play from the supporting cast. It still doesn't feel like a championship contending team, but it's a team that still feels pretty formidable in the Western Conference. They've had their ups and downs, but overall, they've been better than I was thinking they would be, so I'm going to give them a B for the moment. For the San Antonio Spurs, I'm going to give them a D. I was expecting Wemby to be amazing. He might even be exceeding my expectations. He tonight hit a sham god and then finished over Rudy Gobert, which was an absurd highlight. He is clearly one of the future best players in the world, but beyond him, there haven't been that many positives. The role players around him have been abysmal. Don't really have a guard that can consistently get him the ball. There's clearly a lot of work to do with this roster, which makes sense. They just had the 1st overall pick. They're going to probably get another top 5 pick in this upcoming draft, and that's perfect for the San Antonio Spurs. They need to rebuild. They need to build this roster up around Wemby, and that's exactly what they're working on doing. I was just hoping to maybe see a little bit more from some of the guys around Wemby because I already figured he was going to be great. For the Toronto Raptors, I'm going to go ahead and give them a grade of C. I knew they were going to be pretty rough this season. I wasn't expecting anything too crazy, and I like the fact that they've went ahead and started a rebuild. I like the returns they got for Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby. I like Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett as pieces of this team going forward. Scotty Barnes has taken a jump. So all around, while they haven't been very good, they've been right around my expectations. I like the trades that they've made. I wonder if there's going to be any more leading up to the deadline. Like, could they deal out a Jakob Poeltl among some other guys? I guess we'll have to wait and see. But for the moment, the Raptors have had a decent season. Next, we've got the Utah Jazz. I'm going to go ahead and give them a B. I thought about giving them an A, but I held myself off a little bit. They're the 10 seed right now in the Western Conference. I thought they're going to be way worse than this, but they've been one of the hottest teams in the league as of late. Larry Markkanen's looked fantastic. Colin Sexton is breaking onto the scene as a potential core piece going forward. Walker Kessler's been really good coming off the bench. John Collins has been pretty good in the starting lineup as a small ball center. They've got some good stuff cooking over there in Utah. I thought they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league. They're in the play-in race. I'm interested to see what they do at the deadline. They could either sell some pieces or bring in some more guys to try and push this thing forward. Either way, don't really think they could go wrong. They're kind of just playing with house money at the moment. And finally, for the Washington Wizards, they're going to go ahead and get a grade of D. I thought this team was going to be pretty bad. That's exactly what they've been so far. But the big thing that knocks them down from, say, like a C, which is right about expectations, to lower, is the failure of Jordan Poole this season. I was really hoping he would break onto the scene as a core piece for this team, that he would establish himself as part of their identity going forward. And instead, I don't know if he really has the rest of the season in Washington. The only reason he's probably going to stay here is because his contract is pretty untradeable at the moment. He's been bad so far this season. Maybe under the new head coach that they recently brought in after moving on from Wes Unseld, he'll get a little bit better, but I'm just not super optimistic about his future. I've liked the play of like Bilal Coulibaly, for example. They've built up the trade value of Tyus Jones and Daniel Gafford, who they can move on from. Same thing for Kyle Kuzma. And overall, if they can get some assets for some of those guys and get a top pick this year, it's all around a success. I was just hoping to see more from one of the core guys that they picked up this offseason in Jordan Poole. With all that being said, those are my grades for all 30 NBA teams at the halfway point of the season. Let me know down below in the comments whether I gave your team too high of a grade, too low of a grade, or perfectly, or just any team in general. Love to hear your thoughts as always. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Maybe I'll redo this video at the end of the year once the season wraps up. I think that'd be kind of fun to kind of make this a halfway point and end of season tradition. This is a fun video to make. I haven't done like a full grading video like this in a really long time around the channel. It was a good time. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this. I know y'all usually really like the every team videos. I want to get more of those out to y'all. Just been looking for some concepts. But for the moment, appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.